Hi friends, it's Emily with Emily T. Astrology. Welcome to Hermes Speaks. This is your weekly astro check-in where we explore the current quality of time. And we listen to Hermes, Mercury, our messenger god, our traditional planet of astrology. We listen to Hermes speak through the written word and bibliomancy, sometimes through conversation and through story. For today's show, I am looking at the next 2 weeks worth of transits because there is a series of transits that are taking place between our fastest moving planetary bodies, Sun, Moon, and Mercury, and our three outermost planetary bodies in our solar system, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, that all seem intimately linked and threads within a larger story, a larger tapestry that extends beyond 1 week. So we're looking at the next 2 weeks in today's episode. It's my feeling that if we are observant, paying attention, listening to what is arising in our own personal lives and awareness in these next few weeks, we might be seeing some hints or clues, some foreshadowing about what may be occurring on the more collective world stage come July, when Jupiter moves into Leo and makes several of these same aspects to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that our faster moving planets, Sun, Moon, and Mercury, will be making in these next couple of weeks. So we are going to be looking at this storyline, and of course we will bring in some bibliomancy for a little added oracular guidance. That's what I've got for you today. Let's dive into it. So we are looking at May 13th through the 26th, this 2-week period. And I'm just going to begin by listing off the transits that I am looking at as part of this story. Keep in mind, these are not all of the transits that are happening in these next couple of weeks. There are other aspects between different planets occurring. And of course, the moon herself, who moves so quickly, will be making many more aspects than just these I'm listing off here. But as I see it, these are the transits that are taking place in the next 2 weeks that I feel are linked, that are threads of the same tapestry. So let me just list off the particulars. On May 14th, Mercury will conjoin the Sun for its Cazimi moment at 23 degrees of Taurus. Later that same day, on the 14th, the Moon will move into Taurus. By May 16th, we have a new moon, Sun and Moon conjoining each other at 25 degrees of Taurus. That same day, the Moon will conjoin Mercury, now at 29 degrees of Taurus. The Moon will move into Gemini, and by late that evening or into the wee hours on May 17th, the Moon will conjoin Uranus at 1 degree of Taurus. On May 17th, Mercury moves into Gemini and will conjoin Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini. On May 18th, Mercury will sextile Neptune, 3 degrees from Gemini to Aries, respectively. On May 19th, Mercury will trine Pluto at 5 degrees, Gemini, Aquarius, respectively. On May 20th, the Sun will move into Gemini. That same day, the Moon will move into Leo, and the Moon will form sextiles to both the Sun in Gemini and Uranus in Gemini on that day from Leo. On May 21st, the Moon, while in Leo, will form a trine to Neptune in Aries, an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius, and a sextile to Mercury in Gemini. On May 22nd, the Sun will conjoin Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini. On May 24th, the Sun will sextile Neptune from 3 degrees Gemini and Aries, respectively. On May 25th, the Moon will move into Libra, and while in Libra, she will oppose Neptune in Aries, form a trine to the Sun in Gemini, and a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. And by May 26th, the Sun in Gemini will form a trine to Pluto in Aquarius from 5 degrees of each sign, and the Moon will trine Mercury from Libra to Gemini. So, I mean, that's a lot of transits, right? It's a lot of transits that are taking place between these 6 planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. We have a series of some conjunctions, but mostly what I have listed here are the sextiles and the trines. So let's just break this down really simply, talking about the aspects first. The conjunctions, in the case of the Mercury cazimi, the Mercury conjoining the Sun, and the new moon, of course, the conjunction as an aspect speaks to the melding or the blending of the significations of those 2 planets. It's a marrying of the 2 or more planets coming together, and their significations, their energies, if you will, are being conjoined. They're marrying each other. In the case of the sextile, this aspect is in the nature of Venus, and it is considered to be cooperative. I think of the sextile as being mutually beneficial. Both parties are wanting to scratch each other's backs, if you will. And the trine is in the nature of Jupiter. It is a free flowing of support and energy. It is unencumbered movement between the planets in question that are in this trine aspect or relationship to each other. Now let's look at our players briefly. What are we talking about? Well, in the case of the Sun, I am thinking of this for our purposes here today quite simply as our spirit, our consciousness, or our spiritual awareness. In the case of the moon, I think of this as our body or our emotions, our somatic experience and understanding of our world. And with Mercury, this is our mind and how we communicate. So if we are breaking this down into really simple keywords, I would think of the Sun, Moon, and Mercury portion of this 2-week storyline as being the spirit, body, mind. Then, if we are talking about our outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, I think of Uranus as the great disruptor or the great awakener. Neptune is our dream, our vision, and the dissolution of boundaries. And Pluto is powerful transformation, where sometimes big things become small and small things become big. So, okay, what does it mean when we put all of these things together? We've got spirit, mind, body, a connection there. We've got awakening, we've got vision and dream, we have powerful transformation, we have support, we have the blending of energies, we have cooperation, we have unencumbered movement. And of course, with the exception of the new moon and the Mercury cazimi that are taking place in Taurus, the rest of these aspects and transits that I have listed off are all taking place in the fire and air signs: Gemini, Aries, Leo, and Libra. And Aquarius. Aquarius because of Pluto's involvement, right? These are the fire and air signs. Fire and air signs are all diurnal or masculine, meaning they are spirited, they are expressive, particularly outwardly expressive in a forward motion, outward motion kind of way. And so when we add that in, what do we see when we put all of this together? We have dynamic, expressive, spirited support, cooperation, and unencumbered movement taking place around new visions, new dreams, the dissolution of stopgaps or boundaries in our consciousness, in our awareness, in our somatic body, mind, spirit connection. Wow, right? This sounds like amazing. It sounds like we have an opportunity in the next couple of weeks to really, if we are cognizant, if we are being observant, and a lot of this we're talking about is Gemini. Gemini is a sign that is all about curiosity, right? So if we stay curious over these next couple of weeks, my feeling is that we have an opportunity to really, in a very personal way, these are, Sun, Moon, and Mercury are fast-moving planets, very personal. Our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our consciousness, in a very personal way, start to get some ideas around what new shift is going to take place in our lives, what new awareness, what new ideas, what way to break free of the boundaries and restrictions of our old paradigms that we have been living within. This feels exciting to me. It feels dynamic. It feels perhaps revelatory. We do have Uranus involved here, so this could be a little shocking for our nervous systems, whatever is coming in. In general, though, this next 2 weeks feels like we have potential for rapid, accelerated, new awareness, growth, shifts in consciousness, and somatic emotional responses that are moving quickly, that are expanding, that are unencumbered with free support. There could be the potential these next couple of weeks for some real personal beginnings that feel like light bulb moments in our lives about how we're going to move forward. Take a look at the charts for May 21st and May 25th. You can see on May 21st, we have what is called a basket formation. There is the opposition between the moon in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, and then there are trines and sextiles forming between Moon and Pluto and the planets in Aries and Gemini. And then on May 25th, we have what is called a Kite formation. You can see here we've got the opposition is Moon in Libra to Neptune in Aries. And then we have the trines and sextiles taking place with the other planets in Aquarius and Gemini. And these two configurations, the basket and the kite, are both configurations associated with potential. The kite often with creativity, creative potential. There is enough of the trines and sextiles taking place that there is that free flow, there is that cooperation, and then the opposition, in this case, is Kite between the moon and Neptune, provides the tension, provides the dynamism that helps the trines and sextiles to actually create something, to actually have the ability to latch on to something and go somewhere. So the kite, very creatively potential, and the basket, similarly, there's so much of these harmonious aspects, the sextiles and the trines, and then you do still have the opposition that provides the tension, that provides the tread. You need something to grip onto, something hard, something tense, something with texture in order for all of those harmonious aspects, the trines and the sextiles, in order for them to cooperate and flow freely. They have to have something to hold on to. So what we are seeing in both of these charts, and it's just kind of fluidly happening throughout these next 2 weeks, the kite, the basket formation, is the seeding or the potential for creativity, for growth, for support, for expansion, for awareness, all of these things coming online. And the reason that I feel like this might be a foreshadowing period or a moment of personal clues or hints, the personal, because we're talking about Sun, Moon, and Mercury, very personal planets in many ways to us, those faster moving planets, that will foreshadow what's coming in July, Because what is coming in July is Jupiter. By the end of June will move into Leo, and it will begin to form those trines and sextiles, that basket formation, a similar basket formation that the moon, when she is in Leo, is making. Because Jupiter will oppose Pluto in Aquarius, it will trine Neptune in Aries, it will sextile Uranus in Gemini. So come July, and look at this chart for July 19th in particular, when the moon is in Libra, we've got even more. It's almost a 6-pointed star on July 19th. You can see the configuration there. With this basket that is forming this summer, as I already talked about, the basket being creative with a lot of potential. It has the opposition to provide the tension, the grit, but it has all of those trines and sextiles. This is taking place in July with our outer planets. Yes, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Saturn's also involved here, but it's just too much. I'm not bringing it in for today's purposes, but Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, those three outermost planets in our current understanding of our solar system. I know, Pluto's a dwarf planet, but you know what I mean. And Jupiter, one of our social planets, one of the planets that speaks to the collective. So Jupiter is that bridge between the faster moving, more personal planets. All of the planets speak to something personally within us, but just, in one way of looking at the planets, we've got Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars as our faster moving, more personal planets. We have Jupiter and Saturn as our social teacher collective planets. And then we have the outers, the transpersonal of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So by the time we come to July and we see this lovely, amazing basket that's taking place between Jupiter and then those outer transpersonal planets, that's why my feeling is this more personal Sun, Moon, Mercury 2-week foreshadowing period might bring up some personal awareness, some individual new seeds, new shifts in consciousness that then we see are hinted at what becomes more collective, what becomes more mundane, or events on the world stage, shifts in the zeitgeist in the world stage come July. So that's my feeling about this next couple of weeks. Dynamic, potential, creativity, new awareness, and upgrades in consciousness. I know that sounds a little like, we're all going to be upgrading. I don't mean it that way, but it feels like there's potential for the seeds or the kernels or the glimmers of some really exciting and dynamic shifts in our paradigms. It sounds like I'm being sensational, but I really do think that this is on offer. This is on offer if we choose to be curious, if we choose to co-create, if we choose to be open to what is arising. I highly recommend listen in to what is happening for you in your life. Are you getting some new direction in which to go? Or are you just having a shift in perspective? I have to tell you, recently, I had a tiny little shift in perspective around something that, just to write it down on paper, it feels quite small. Here's Pluto maybe a little bit we're talking about. It feels like quite small. But that little shift in perspective has kind of changed a lot. It made a big difference in how I approach something very important to me. So I'm saying something like this. It doesn't have to be aliens are coming down. Who knows? Maybe it could be. It doesn't have to be that something like massive changes on the world stage. I'm talking about those tiny little, seemingly small at first, shifts in our own perspective, shifts in our own understanding that years later when we look back, we'll say that moment really did change everything. That moment really did start me out on a new trajectory that I never would have known. I never would have known that that's where I was going to go with that shift in perspective. But that feels like it's potentially what's on offer for us in these next couple of weeks. Woo, let's do it. So we have come to the part of the show where I listen to Hermes speak and I bring in those mercurial insights through the written word and bibliomancy. And we're talking a lot about Gemini. A lot of this is taking place in Gemini. I actually have 2 pulls. Gemini, our sign of the twins, our double-bodied sign. I have 2 pulls from 2 different books today. I pulled the first one because I liked the title of the book, and it is Ascension by Michael Binge. And I pulled this one first, and when I read what I opened the book to, I felt like I needed additional clarification or insight. And I had actually been planning to pull from the second book that I will pull from. But then this one caught my eye on the shelf. I opened it. I read what I read, felt like I needed some additional insight. And so then I pulled from the original book I was thinking of. But first, Ascension. I opened the book and read. I can't say how much time passed. I felt like I was losing myself to the mountain, to the climb. My mind, my whole identity was being reduced to the movement of the steps, to the weight of each boot crunching into the snow. I had the intense sensation that if I climbed much further, I would become part of this mountain, stuck here forever. I needed to ground myself in something real. Okay, so that's what I read first. I felt like it was speaking to everything we've just talked about with this series of transits over the next 2 weeks, but I felt like I needed more insight in order to interpret what I thought it was saying to me. So then I decided to, in fact, pull from the original book I was thinking of for this week. I was thinking of The Soul's Code by James Hillman. And so I decided to go ahead, pull from this book as well for some added oracular insight into this series of transits, this tapestry. And I opened the book and read, I opened to chapter 2, which is entitled Growing Down. Okay, a little bit longer. The ladder, whose ascent implies spiritual progress, has a long pedigree. The Hebrews, Greeks, and Christians all gave special value to the heights, and our spiritually influenced compass of Western morality tends to put all better things up high and worse things down low. By the last century, growth became inexorably caught in this ascensionist fantasy. Ascensionist in the book, the other one is ascension, right? I can't make this stuff up. Okay. Where was I? By the last century, growth became inexorably caught in this ascensionist fantasy. Darwin's thesis, the descent of man, became in our minds the ascent of man. Each immigrant moved upward in social class as buildings moved upward with their elevators to more expensive levels. Industrial refining of buried minerals, coal, iron, copper, oil, Pluto, increased their economic value and the financial status of their owners simply by raising these basic stuffs from below to above. By now, the upward idea of growth has become a biographical cliche. To be an adult is to be a grown-up. Yet this is merely one way of speaking of maturity, and a heroic one at that. For even tomato plants and the tallest trees send down roots as they rise toward the light. Yet the metaphors for our lives see mainly the upward part of organic motion. Hasn't something critical been omitted in the ascensionist model? Birthing. Normally, we come into the world head first, like divers into the pool of humanity. Besides, the head has a soft spot through which the infant soul, according to the traditions of body symbolism, could still be influenced by its origins. The slow closing of the head's fontanelle and fissures, its hardening into a tightly sealed skull, signified separation from an invisible beyond and final arrival here. Descent. Descending down the birth canal, head down, right? In a typical birth. Descent takes a while. we grow down, and we need a long life to get on our feet. Okay. So first of all, I just marvel. I just marvel at the way this stuff works. The connection between these two passages in my mind is it's just so loud. In the first, Ascension by Nicholas Binge, it's a story of a man climbing, in a climbing party, ascending up this kind of mythical mountain in the snow, and it's treacherous, and it's the mountain itself begins to symbolize things, and people begin to kind of lose their grip on reality. It's like ascending up into some different sense of reality. He talks about his feet in the snow, and the very last sentence of the passage that I read from The Soul's Code by James Hillman mentions, like, it takes a long life to get on our feet, right? There's something about the romanticizing, the grandeur, the idealization of ascension, of the moving up, of the climbing of the mountain to ever greater heights, to ever greater reaches, right? And yet both of these passages, the shorter one with ascension, he says, I felt like I needed to ground into reality. And in the James Hillman Soul's Code, he's talking about we have lost something, we have missed something when we negate or stop thinking about or stop mentioning the importance of the roots, of the growing down, the roots under the trees, of the growing down into the earth, our feet on the ground, right? And so what do we get from this? In the one sense, the climbing of the mountain, it calls this character. It's inexorable. He knows the risks. He knows the dangers. He knows that it's probably a fool's errand, and yet he cannot stop from the climb. The climb is beginning to bend reality. He's losing sight of what is real, but he recognizes, I need to get my feet on the ground. I need to feel grounded in something that is real. And in the other, the over-romanticization of the upward motion fails to recognize the equal and opposite importance of growing down, right? Of connecting to soul, right? And that's one way of looking at it, that spirit is up, right? Spirit is up and soul is down. And we need both. They're of equal importance in order for us to gain maturity, to grow fully, both up and down as human beings. So what does this have to say with regard to our couple of weeks of transits? Okay, so what I hear here is that this series of transits taking place predominantly in our air and fire signs, predominantly with these harmonious aspects, right? The trines and the sextiles and the unencumbered movement, the support, the awakening aspect of Uranus, the expressive, fast-paced, outward moving fire and air sign, right? I feel like there's a little bit of a caution here that let's not forget that our new moon is in Taurus, right? Let's not forget that the new moon and the Cazimi is in Taurus, an earth sign, a grounded, stable, slow-moving earth sign. Let's not be so excited, so filled up and inspired with these light bulb genius moments, these shifts in our perspective and our consciousness and our awareness, that we lose sight of the ground, our connection to the earth, our connection to our physicality, our connection to being human, right? And I think that there is, with all of this fire and air and Uranus and Gemini, like fast-paced, moving, all the talk about AI, all the talk about technology. There's so much potential, right? We've got these basket configurations, these kite configurations, right? So much potential for ideas and technology and new innovation. Yes, 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 yes. But if we completely surrender our connection to the earth, our connection to our physicality, our connection to materiality, if we lose the soul, in favor only of the spirit, of the mind, of the ascent, we might like float off, right? We might just ascend to the top of the mountain and be entirely disconnected from what it means to be alive as a human, right? So that's kind of what I'm getting here, is that we need to, in our cognizance and our curiosity and our interest, that I encourage us all to have these next few weeks, in our observation, in our listening of what is arising within us deeply personally, that it's exciting, that maybe every once in a while remember to go outside and put a bare foot on the ground, right? Maybe remember that tree in your neighborhood that you love has deep roots too. That we as people, in our maturation process, as we grow fully, we need to grow both up and down. And if we do that, wow, can you imagine? Can you imagine what we are capable of with this astrology that's coming up, and the astrology of the summer with Jupiter and that basket formation that's coming in? What could we do if we kept our feet on the ground and then, with one foot still on the ground, ascended the summit, climbed the mountain, right? What could we do? How exciting. How exciting. That's what I've got for you this week. I hope you found this interesting. I would love to hear what comes up for you in the next couple of weeks. Let me know in the comments. Is something shifting in your perspective that feels like it might be something small, but ultimately has big ramifications? Please let me know. I'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Really helps me help a girl out. Yeah. If you are looking to talk with a professional, book a reading with me. Always happy to connect with you. EmilyTotomer.com is the website where you can book with me. Have a lovely week, guys. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And keep your feet on the ground. Take care, and I'll see you next week.